Thursday, July 25th. This is a virtual meeting, not by virtue of a public health emergency as we've done these in the past, but by virtue of the aftermath of the major storm that we're all familiar with. So again, let's call this meeting to order, and let's see. There we go. Thank you so much, Annie, for presenting the colors. So with that, we are. I know it's a little tacky after having done this in person, but it is what it is today. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. That's a challenge doing that in multiple locations. So I would first off, even in this remote setting, like to acknowledge that Missoula County recognizes that this event today takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. I'm Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer. For those of you who don't know me, I am joined today by my colleagues, Commissioners Juanita Vero and Josh Slotnick, in room 206 of our administrative building of Missoula County. And it looks like there's a few other staff members there also. And would you, Annie, like to provide us with some introductory comments related to closed captioning and such?
Yes, I will do that. So this is Christina. If you are joining us for this meeting virtually today, instructions for turning on closed captioning are on the screen. Coming up, there will be an opportunity to speak during the meeting for public comment virtually. We ask that all speakers today speak slowly and clearly. This helps with the accuracy of the closed captioning. On Microsoft Teams, if you'd like to speak when discussion has been opened for public comment, we ask that you use the raise hand feature. This is a small hand button. If you are calling in on the phone, you need to hit *5 to raise your hand. Once called upon, you will need to hit *6 to unmute. If you have any questions, let me know. Sorry about that.
Okay, and it looks like the colors keep appearing there, which is fine. So before we get on to our one proclamation today, I just want to make note for folks who are interested in getting information about the aftermath of the storm and recovery from the effects of last night's thunderstorm that impacted the community. You can call an information number. It's 406-258-INFO, or you can go for online information to missoula.co/storm. Or if it is a true emergency, do not hesitate to dial 911. The 911 center has been flooded with calls, so please be patient. If no one is picking up initially, it's not because the call center or the 911 center is not active. It's just that there are a lot of calls coming in. So with that, would either Josh or Juanita like to read today's ADA anniversary proclamation?
Sure, happy to do it. Whereas disability is a natural part of the human experience and more than 13% of Missoula County residents live with one or more disabilities, and whereas 34 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act, first comprehensive declaration of civil rights for people with disabilities prohibiting discrimination based solely on one's disability status, became law on July 26, 1990. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans living with disabilities to participate in mainstream aspects of American life, pursue employment opportunities, purchase goods and services, and be treated as equal and valued members of society. And whereas Missoula County recognizes that more work is needed to realize the full potential of the ADA to ensure equal access in all areas of life for people living with disabilities. And whereas Missoula County recognizes that community participation by individuals with disabilities is vital to the success of our communities. and the county remains steadfast in its commitment to the principles of equality, the goals of the ADA, and reaffirms its dedication to fully implement the ADA. Now, therefore, we, the Missoula County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2024 as a day to commemorate the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act in Missoula, Montana, and recognize the hard work and sacrifice of disability advocates and the policymakers who have worked tirelessly to ensure people living with disabilities have access to the same rights and opportunities as everyone else, and to reaffirm our commitment to fully implement the ADA. We dedicate ourselves and encourage all citizens to commit to fulfilling the promise of the ADA for a more fair, accessible, and interconnected community. Signed, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you, Josh, for that. Is there any public comment on the proclamation? All right. And as you'll see on the agenda, there are 4 public hearings today, but this is your opportunity if anyone's joining us. I was going to say in person or virtually, but I guess if anyone's out there virtually joining us today and would like to offer public comment on anything not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. As Christina mentioned earlier, please use the raise hand function and we will call on you in the order in which you raise your hand. Any public comment on items not on today's agenda?
3.
And if you're on the phone, you can just unmute yourself. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. Our current claims list of Missoula County, and again, this is claims received as of July 2nd through July 16th by the Commissioner's Office, total $6,683,966.92. We, again, as I just mentioned, have 4 public hearings today. Each of these will begin with a staff report, followed by an opportunity, if it's relevant, for the applicant or the applicant's representative to make comments. We will then open it up for public comment from anyone joining us today from the public, and we'll close the public hearing and then have an opportunity for the commission to ask questions, deliberate, and take action on the items. So we begin today with a public hearing that I'll open on the Grass Valley Industrial Subdivision, and we'll begin with a staff report from Tim Worley. Tim.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Let me switch my screens here. All right, this is Grass Valley Industrial Subdivision. I'm Tim Worley with Planning, Development, and Sustainability. This is a 19-lot industrial subdivision proposal by Ethos Civil, representing Grass Valley Industrial Park, LLC. The subdivision is located in the Y. It's a 43-acre parcel, and again, it's a 19-lot industrial subdivision. It's proposed in 2 phases. The zoning out here is Industrial Center Light, which includes light industrial, artisan, and limited commercial activities. Some of the activities that you see out here at the Y in this general vicinity include warehousing, tool manufacturing, recycling, and fabrication. I'm going to go through the typical subdivision review criteria, starting with agriculture. This parcel did have somewhat of an agricultural history. The Y interchange began construction in the early 1970s, and since that time, this location's become increasingly light industrial in nature. This property has no surface water rights at present, and it's surrounded by light industrial and commercial uses. There's a network of public and private roads in this location. It's kind of a mix. The proposal is to extend 2 roads and create 1 new road. All roads meet the 26-foot wide industrial standard. So Moccasin Lane is one property that's proposed, or one, excuse me, road that will be extended. Moccasin actually connects all the way out to Deshaw Lane. And this will provide a connection to Enterprise Way. Long Acres Lane currently proceeds from Alita and terminates here and is proposed to extend all the way to Racetrack Lane, which is a fairly new paved road on the scene. And Ranger Road is the cul-de-sac road that's proposed to be built as a brand new road as part of the subdivision. Because of the 26-foot width, roads in the subdivision are kind of the bare minimum for industrial and commercial. So we are recommending a no parking resolution for subdivision roads. And there may need to be multiple resolutions as there are multiple phases and 4 different on-site roads involved. Now, just as a reminder, an on-site road is a road wholly contained within the subdivision. Curb and gutter is required for each of the 4 on-site roads, so there are a total of 4 different variances required of this project, because the proposal is for 26 feet of pavement with roadside swales. Staff supports the curb and gutter variances. Curb and gutter are typically part of a larger drainage network, which is lacking in this general area. We felt it was difficult to make curb and gutter work in isolation. Now, Planning Board, in weighing in on these 4 variances, actually had a split vote, basically a 3-3 vote, which is a no recommendation vote, essentially. Their concern was that this was setting up substandard urban area infrastructure. Now, Long Acres Lane, again, the goal is to create a through road that would connect the existing stretch of Long Acres all the way to Racetrack Lane. We discovered in the review process that Long Acres Lane, the portion that exists, is within a private access easement with limited use and scope. And in essence, they can put up a barrier right here and not allow for through traffic. And as a result of that, we are recommending a cul-de-sac within the subdivision somewhere in this location if needed. Again, the issue here is that the Long Acres number 2 subdivision to the east actually has a limited use and scope as far as this private access easement. The use and scope is limited to the users or to the folks within the subdivision itself. And evidence for this restriction is on the Long Addition number 2 plat. There's a couple different lots along Enterprise Way that if they are built upon at phase 1, they can have access directly off Enterprise Way. However, we have a condition that once this cul-de-sac road is constructed at phase 2, these 2 lots will have to get their access off of the cul-de-sac, which again is called Ranger Road. There's a traffic impact study conducted for this subdivision that included review of impacts to West Broadway, Highway 93, and the interstate from this subdivision. It was concluded that the Interstate 90 ramps at the Y are near capacity at present, and that the subdivision will increase interchange traffic by about 1%. That's a small enough increase that no mitigations were recommended out of the study, and we have no conditions related to that. So 5-foot wide sidewalks are required on all on-site roads. So again, we're talking about 4 different variances because what's requested in this case is a network of walkways that would be just on one side of the on-site roads. It's essentially a paved pathway network that ties the subdivision together. And I'll illustrate that starting up here on the north end on Long Acres. The proposal is for walkways, 5-foot wide walkways along one side of all these on-site roads, including a stretch of Enterprise Way where walkway isn't required, connecting all the way to Ranger Road, which would also have a walkway on just one side. Staff is in support of 3 of the 4 pedestrian facility variances. We felt that road alignments make it difficult to meet the 2 walkway standard for both Long Acres Lane and Racetrack Drive. We felt having walkways on both sides of on-site roads adds minimal function. In fact, it ends up serving subdivided lots on the opposite side of an on-site road in a way that doesn't really serve folks within the subdivision. So we felt there was an issue of proportionality that we needed to acknowledge. Staff does recommend denial of 1 variance, and that's to allow pedestrian facilities on one side of the cul-de-sac road, Ranger Road. We felt it was fairly straightforward just to wrap a walkway along the opposite side of Ranger Road, just to have a continuous facility along that relatively short stretch of road. We didn't see any hardship with that. So with planning board, again, there were 6 members present at the July 6th hearing. All variance motions related to pedestrian facilities failed. They didn't get 1 affirmative vote. The board majority, or I should say, they got 1 affirmative vote for 3 of the roadways in question. The board majority simply wanted to see the subdivision regulations standard affirmed, and they felt that this was necessary infrastructure for an urban area industrial subdivision. So on to water and sanitation issues. This project was granted a city sewer connection. Water will come via a single exempt well pumping to a fairly large storage tank. Similar to what you see in this photo, the Love's storage tank, which is about 197,000 gallons. The tank proposed for this project is almost double that at a minimum of 380,000 gallons. It's proposed to be within a utility lot in phase 1. The water tank itself must comply with setbacks, so we do have a condition essentially allowing the utility lot shape to change to meet setback. Oops. Now the tank will be supplied by a single well, again, exempt from water rights permitting. This applicant is working toward a water right, but as long as this is an exempt well, the output must remain under the 35 gallon per minute and 10 acre foot threshold. So we are recommending a condition requiring metering of well output as well as annual reporting of water usage within the subdivision, with the covenant spelling out the usage limitations. It's noted that external watering sources may be necessary for things like landscaping. And that's something that's actually in the subdivision application. We think that probably won't be an issue initially. It would just be an issue if the subdivision built out fairly suddenly and all the water was spoken for in a fairly short period of time. So the water tank will supply potable water via mains to every lot, and that allows for fire hydrants to have essentially municipal fire flows. Sprinklers may still be required depending on industrial uses on individual lots. And so we do have a recommendation for that note to be on the plat to that effect, as well as an indication in the covenants. Planning board expressed concern about the exempt well within the context of industrial uses. They felt that this project should have a water right immediately, and they were concerned that there might be, for instance, some excessive user, industrial user that might use enough volume that it isn't consistent with the exempt well assumptions kind of baked into the project. A geotechnical analysis was conducted on the property. The site does have fairly diverse characteristics. In some places you have fairly fast infiltration of water. In other places, there's sort of a hard pan that restricts water infiltration. So per the geotechnical analysis recommendation, we're recommending that there be a subsequent geotech analysis for each lot upon development of each lot. There is a high pressure gas line that crosses a portion of lot 18. It's required to be a no build zone. We're recommending also that it be depicted on building site plans with information about it being in the covenants and on the face of the plat. And we do have one condition, commissioners, that I would recommend a little bit of additional language just to provide some clarification. We are recommending an amendment section for the covenants that captures a lot of the issues that are important, that are directly related to the subdivision review criteria. But we wanted to make sure that those sections could be changed if the covenants are brought back before the county commissioner. So that's what that additional language allows for. So again, staff's recommendation was for subdivision approval. Planning board did not support the subdivision. I think there were 6 votes against recommending approval of the subdivision. They did support industrial opportunities that would be provided by the subdivision. They were concerned about the substandard infrastructure proposed. They felt that now is the time to make things like pedestrian connections as opposed to waiting, and that a water right is more appropriate for an industrial subdivision rather than having an exempt well sort of situation. So commissioners, I've got the motions bundled essentially in 4s. You might remember curb and gutter affects 4 of basically based on all the on-site roads. So there's 4 separate variances. And again, all those recommendations were kind of deadlocks, so to speak. These are non-recommendations per the 3-3 votes on the curb and gutter variances. And then regarding the sidewalk variances, planning board agreed on variance number 5 that Ranger Road should have walkways on both sides. So they passed that motion to recommend walkways on both sides. But the 3 other variance motions that would allow walkways on one side of the other on-site roads failed. And then when it came to the main motion, planning board did have 6 votes of no on that main motion. Staff's recommendation obviously is approval for the subdivision, and I'll be available if you have any questions. And I believe the applicant is also online. We would recommend a slight amendment to the motion should you approve the subdivision today, commissioners, and that is just adding as amended to the end of the motion, because I would guess that there will be amended conditions of approval today. That's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to present to us? And Matt, welcome. And if you could be so kind as to make sure that in your comments you address the variance requests, that would be great. It's all yours. And we cannot hear you. I think he was saying he's okay with the planning board's denial. Is that what you were saying, man?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you now.
You can hear your speaker. Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
There we go. Sorry, got out of the habit of doing this after COVID for so long. Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to present on this project and make our case for it. My name is Matt Malott. I'm with Grass Valley Industrial Park LLC, the applicant for this subdivision, and we'll have myself speak for a minute about the overall, why here and why now. Don Malott, my brother, and also involved in this project, will talk more about some of the specifics related to variances, and also Julie Marriott with WGM Group will talk about the water rights concerns and some of those elements. So so I guess to start on the why here and why now. I am a owner of a commercial real estate company in town, a brokerage firm in town, and we field a lot of calls from both groups that are already here, primarily in the industrial world, that already exist, where they employ people here, they have a facility, and also groups that are looking to locate here for the first time in Missoula. And so we hear a lot from the people that are the employers, the builders, the manufacturers, those sorts of people who do the value-added manufacturing and logistics operations and all those sorts of things. And over the course of years, you start to hear the same themes over and over about these groups that are looking for a new location or to expand a location in Missoula. And that has been, especially in the last couple of years, it's that there is a lack of appropriately zoned, relatively flat land, so appropriately zoned meaning industrial zone, near I-90, and also that has a key element of fire flow water. And by fire flow, that usually means enough to provide varying ways to look at it, but basically enough for fire hydrants, and then water capacity that will allow for an ESFR sprinkler system, which stands for early suppression, fast response. And so that is the gold standard for many industrial and warehousing uses, is this ESFR system. And so you need municipal scale water to do that. And so the development park, the Missoula Development Park, was great for that because it provided all those things, had flat land, appropriately zoned. But the development park is nearing full build out. And so there are relatively few, in fact, I don't know that there's any really, where you can get in the 5 to 10 acre range of contiguous space to be able to build a new facility for manufacturing, light manufacturing and logistics operations and those sorts of things. So as the development park gets built out, there's sustained demand for industrial zone land that is in close proximity to I-90, has the right zoning, all these different elements I was talking about. And so we're kind of running out of it, of platted, ready to go with the services there. So one of the main reasons for this project is to accommodate those types of users, and that type of demand has been consistent. For this project already, we already have groups inquiring about it, provided that it's approved, that are inquiring, looking to build new facilities on subdivided portions of this property, provided that it's approved. So that's part of the why feedback that we hear from tenants and buyers of this land is there's a lack of the right kind of industrial land. And then second to that, the other point of feedback that we hear all the time from manufacturers and logistics operations is that it is difficult to locate in Missoula because of a lack of housing options and affordability. And this hearing is not about, it's about Grass Valley Industrial, but part of the reason why, in 2 weeks, we'll be back here talking about Grass Valley Gardens, but the reason why we do these things in parallel is we try to build complete places, because doing economic development, so the job side of it, which is what we're focused on heavily with GVI, Grass Valley Industrial, you can't really do economic development unless you have corresponding housing and then services to go along with it. So our emphasis in development is to build complete places where you have jobs, housing, and then retail and services all together. So 2 separate projects being considered separately, but that's part of the reason why we're doing these 2 in parallel, and part of the rationale behind this project. The reason that a lot of the buildings in the Y are developed relatively small, and they're at a relatively small scale, is because of this lack of fire flow water. And so you have a lot of buildings that are magically 11,999 square feet or less, because then you don't have to use sprinklers in many applications. And even the buildings that are larger than that, a lot of times they're relying on cisterns and wells and things like that are kind of cobbled together, and they meet the requirements, but the scale of the development and the intensity of the development that aligns with the zoning is relatively low. And by providing the water system that we're proposing here, this 500,000 gallon water system with the booster pumps that will provide, fire flow water both for hydrants and for ESFR systems, will allow for better development, more intense development, or higher scale uses, I guess you would say, of that land here, the 43 acres that we're talking about. It will allow for that so that you can bring in the types of companies that do that hire, that hire people locally, that do the value-added manufacturing and those sorts of things. In capacity of the brokerage company that we have, I worked with Montana Knife Company and specifically identified this area, and they purchased a piece of land very close to this. And one of the motivating factors for them is knowing that we are proposing this water system and that they would theoretically be able to hook up to that in the near future. And so when they look at adding a 50,000 foot facility with the potential to add more onto it in the future, a key consideration is, do you have the water to be able to do it? So that's a motivating factor for them. And I think they're representative of a lot of the different users and tenants that we interact with on a day-to-day basis of, I-90 and 93. There's a reason why they're there. Like why a lot of these industrial uses are out there, because of that access to those main transportation corridors and that node. And then if you have the fire flow water, you can do a lot of different types of manufacturing and logistics and those sorts of things. So I guess what I'm saying in short is that this type of development, this is where the jobs come from. This is where the tax base gets improved by the more intense you can do the development on a site, provided it's in conformance with the zoning, of course. But that's where jobs and economic development come from, is from these types of projects. And I would say the last thing here is that this project, so the water system that we're proposing, the initial routing of the main circuit of where the water mains would go, is centered on our project, the 43 acres that is under consideration here. But once you have that first circuit established, it is relatively is much more manageable to then add in new circuits that run out through streets to then open up more development of industrial uses in the surrounding area of the Y. And there's quite a bit of either underdeveloped parcels out there or parcels that haven't been developed, but they don't have access to water, municipal scale water currently. So I think this project can be the catalyst that then allows for the kind of systematic growth of a water system that is appropriate for this type of, this section by the Y that is predominantly industrial. So that's the Y.
So you have some other folks who are going to present too here?
Yes. So that's the why here, why now. I'll hand it off to Don Malott to talk a little bit more about the variances and so forth.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Malott. I'm with Ethos civil engineer, and want to present specific to some of the questions that were brought up by the planning board a couple of weeks ago. I think Tim Worley did a great job of giving an overview of the project, but we'll focus in on some of those items that were emphasized during the planning board. And to start us off, I'd like to have Julie Merritt with the WGM Group talk about water. And so I will share my screen here, and we will bring up slides for her to speak to. If I can see, do I have the ability to share a screen?
Christina, can you make sure
We can promote
they
Don.
can share their screen?
Just like saying, give people promotion.
Bear with us a moment, Don. We'll get you
Sure.
hooked up here.
All the technical nuances. Okay, there we go.
Really huge. Oh, wow. There we go.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
We can hear
There's
you
a-
and we can see the screen. Can you hear us is the question.
I try that again. Can you guys hear me before I get started on my spiel here?
There's
Yes,
an
we can
echo.
hear you. Can
Yes.
you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, that was a yes.
Yes. Okay. Got it. All right. So for the record, my name is Julie Merritt. That's Merritt, and I'm a water resource specialist with WGM Group. I want to touch on a few things today regarding the water and water rights for this project. First, I want to explain the water supply that we have encountered with the recently completed GVI well. Then I'll discuss the water demand estimate for the planned uses within the GVI development. And finally, I will address future needs and the water right permitting process. So to begin, let's talk about the physical water supply. In 2010, WGM Group and AMIC conducted a preliminary engineering report for the Y area to evaluate the potential for a regional water supply system. The GVI property lies within this study area. We recently completed one well that will serve as the public water supply for all the lots in GVI. This well is in the same aquifer as the existing Y area water system wells, which are known to be good producers. The red box on this slide indicates the approximate location of the GVI property in this cross-section representation of the aquifer. This aquifer is basically a large unconfined bathtub of layered clays, sand, and gravel, and it is connected to the larger Missoula aquifer. And studies have shown that the Missoula aquifer is one of the most prolific aquifers in the country. So we're confident that we have a good water supply for the area. We have just completed a 24-hour pump test on the well, and that has showed that the well can sustain a pumping rate of 175 gallons a minute with only a small amount of drawdown in the nearby observation well. The pump test also tells us that this well will be more than adequate for the immediate needs of the GVI subdivision, and it has a high potential to be part of the larger regional water supply solution. So let's talk about the water demands next. And this is specific to the GVI subdivision. So the water needs for industrial and commercial uses are difficult to accurately predict because a wide range of activities can fall under these categories. Historically in Montana, industrial use meant things like mining or wood products processing. These activities used up a lot of water. Uses typical in the Y area today are warehouses, auto parts and repair shops, and small fabrication facilities. These businesses use a lot less water. The volume of water needed for typical uses in the Y area today is tied directly to the number of employees in each business and mainly consists of water for drinking and flushing toilets for those employees. To calculate an estimated water usage for GVI, we assumed that there would be one employee for every 800 square feet of building space and 13 gallons per day per employee, which is a DEQ standard. This works out to, and forgive me, I'm going to throw a few numbers at you, so bear with me. This works out to an average of about 6 gallons per square foot per year, which is equal to about 0.45 acre feet per year. And with the 19 lots in GVI, that adds up to less than 10 acre feet. This is comparable to a national study that was conducted by the EPA, where the median water use intensity for warehouse type businesses was about 3 gallons per square foot per year. And the 75th percentile measurement in that study was just under 7 gallons. So you can see that highlighted on the last row of the table in the slide. And so our estimation at 6 gallons per square foot falls right within that measurement from the national study. And I think that provides support for the methodology that we use to estimate the water use for this subdivision. And so since our estimated use for the lots in the GVI subdivision is less than 10 acre feet, we will plan to operate the well under an exemption. In the coming months, as the planned demands develop that exceed 10 acre feet, we will pursue a full water right permit. For the use within the GVI subdivision, the flow from the well will be restricted to 35 gallons a minute. The large storage tank that has been mentioned that will be part of this system will make it possible to have a higher flow, to have that flow available for short periods of time to meet emergency needs. But that said, the flow rate from the well will not exceed 35 gallons a minute, even in emergency situations. So look into the future. As the plans for the Y area develop, it's helpful to know that this well is available to be part of a larger regional water supply. It has been constructed to the appropriate standards and is in a central location. The pump tests show that this well could contribute a substantial portion of the flow rate and volume needed to meet future demands. And most importantly, we have already secured shares from the Grass Valley French Ditch Company to provide mitigation for future water right permitting. And I'm available for any questions that you guys might have.
All right. Thanks, Julie.
Yep, and I'm going to turn it back over to Don.
Okay, back to you, Don.
Okay, I'll move through the rest of this fairly quickly to wrap us up. Just wanted to give an overview of the water system beyond what Julie has described. We are looking at a 500,000 gallon tank for the project, up a bit from our original assumption. So a 500,000 gallon tank, providing fire flows of 1,500 gallons per minute for 4 hours. And as Julie mentioned, this will be a municipal grade system, so will be built to municipal standards. Just a quick visual to show you what that network will look like that will be built out for the project with 12-inch mains that will provide a great flow for not only this project, but potentially for connection in the future, creating that backbone. And we will shortly here be proposing a condition, a no protest for an RSID to show our commitment to allowing this system to be part of a region-wide system, should that occur. Julie mentioned most of these things, but the well being drilled, tested at 175 gallons a minute. We will restrict that to 35 gallons a minute until water rights are obtained. And then wanted to talk briefly about some proposed modifications we have to the conditions of subdivision approval. These relate to water. And so we'll just run through these relatively quickly. The first one is, as a result of our review here earlier this week, became clear that we needed to make clear that we would restrict the withdrawal out of the well at 35 gallons a minute. And so we're proposing to add to condition 13, the developer shall install either a 35 gallon per minute well pump or a restrictor device on the well that allows the well to be pumped at no more than 35 GPMs. And then also to that same condition 13, we are willing to have the reading, recording, and reporting requirement be as often as every 6 months. That would be a change from the annual that is shown in condition 13. We're willing to have maximum transparency on the usage out there, and we thought every 6 months would provide even more transparency on the usage from that well. We wanted to propose 2 more conditions, altogether new conditions. This first one I'm calling condition 14. This relates particularly to the application for water rights. There was some question about timeline on water rights and a milestone for seeking water rights. And so we're proposing a condition that says developer shall apply for water rights within 90 days of reaching measured annualized water usage above 5 acre-feet and shall diligently pursue the same through the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, DNRC. No additional building permits may be filed within the subdivision until application for water rights has been made to the DNRC after reaching 5 acre-feet of annualized usage. And the point here is simply to create a milestone by which we would pursue the water rights and a means for the county to enforce that. And then one additional condition related to the water system. We're proposing condition number 15. This relates to connection to future regional water systems, since there is considerable movement in that direction. And so our proposed language is the following statement shall be shown on the face of the plat, subject to planning office review and approval prior to final plat approval of each phase. That language is acceptance of a deed for a lot within the subdivision shall constitute the assent of the owners to any future SID, RSID, or any legal publicly owned water system equivalent for the purposes of owning, expanding, and or maintaining the project's water system. The acceptance of a deed may be used in lieu of their signatures on an SID, RSID petition. So just making it clear that we are willing to allow this to be part of a future regional system. Very briefly, just wanted to hit on the variance requests, and since there was quite a bit of discussion about that at the planning board, very quickly mention regarding the curb and gutter variance. We are proposing stormwater swales adjacent to the roads, as Tim Worley described. We do believe that is far and away the best method of stormwater management out there, given the lack of a downstream infrastructure. The introduction of curb and gutter actually makes that complicated and makes the situation more difficult because curb and gutter concentrates the flow. And when you concentrate the flow, it's harder to infiltrate the stormwater into the ground. We think that's a net negative and creates risks for downstream impacts. So we're requesting the variance to not have the curb and gutter so that we can sheet flow into the roadside swales. And this is consistent with the development patterns to the northeast, recent plat approval there, as well as the recently approved Riverside plat that was just approved 2 years ago. And then on the sidewalk variance, just a brief discussion here. Tim mentioned this. The colored lines that you see here pretty clearly show what would be produced if we followed the county code very strictly. And while it does provide sidewalk on both sides of the road, it creates a disjointed network, and there's really no pedestrian connectivity produced. We think this is a significant negative for public safety. So you put a pedestrian on a sidewalk, and they develop a sense of comfort by being on that sidewalk, and then they walk to the end of it and they're dropped off onto the edge of a vehicle lane. We don't think that that is a good thing to do. So we are proposing sidewalks on a single side of the roads. And in lieu of putting sidewalks on both sides, we're offering to fill the gaps, so to speak, where the code does not require us to provide sidewalks. We think this fully interconnected pedestrian pathway is a far safer network for pedestrians, and we think it better accomplishes the county's objective for pedestrian safety. And again, this is consistent with recently approved projects in the area, both the Riverside and the Long Addition projects, where sidewalk was proposed on one side of both projects. And this just shows a bit of what Tim was describing earlier on the west side of Racetrack. This is just one example on the west side of Racetrack. You can see that if we were to put a sidewalk on that side of Racetrack lane, it wouldn't serve any benefit for our project that we are developing, would mitigate no impacts that we're creating with our project. It actually would do relatively nothing for any of the adjacent properties either, because they receive their legal access off of Moccasin Lane and off of Dayshaw Lane. This is just one example. The same could be said for Long Acres to the north as well. So we think that providing the full connected pedestrian pathway along the length of Racetrack is a much better option for pedestrians. The last thing that I will bring up is that we understand staff recommending denial of the variance for Ranger Road, for having sidewalk on Ranger Road. And part of that denial related to the lack of pedestrian access to lots 4, 8, and 14. And we do understand that comment, and as a result, we would offer up as a modification to actually extend the sidewalk the length of lot 5 so that it does provide a pedestrian connection to lot 4. We'd also offer a mid-block crossing on Ranger Road that provides access immediately to lot 8 and lot 14. We think that would mitigate the concern about pedestrian access to those 3 lots. And with that, that is all we had formally prepared, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have later in the hearing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Don and Julie and Matt, and stand by. We'll probably have some questions here in a moment, but before we go to questions, is there any public comment today on the Grass Valley Industrial subdivision proposal?
Commissioner Strohmeyer, I have a public comment. This is Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, you are like 2 millimeters on my screen, so I could not see who that was. So go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. So my name is Andrew Hagemeyer, and I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for Missoula County. I wanted to talk a little bit about condition, I think it was 15 that Dawn had proposed. So this is a little outside of the normal of what would happen as me coming in to make a public comment, but there's a reason, and I'm going to explain it briefly, is that we are working on the Y infrastructure plan. And at the time that this subdivision was submitted and it was going through public or the agency comment period during sufficiency review, we were in a much different phase of the Y infrastructure plan. We were looking at big picture alternatives, developing a huge water system, huge sewer system. We weren't to the point in the planning process where we were looking at actual implementable steps that we could financially really achieve. And we are in the midst of doing that right now in our planning process. And we're a month or two away from having a draft of the plan. And what we're seeing right now as we're working through what we can actually achieve financially and both physically, is that the best spot to develop a public water supply system to serve the the area south of the interstate at the Y is right along Racetrack Lane. And the reason being that's one of the best spots is that's towards the north end of Racetrack Lane is pretty much the high point of or it's close to the high point of this area south of the interstate. And there's also, I think Julie sort of touched on it, there's also been some studies, not just for this subdivision, but for previous studies that have done some test wells and shown that on a property north of Highway 10, there's actually really good groundwater there that could support a public supply well. And so that's all pointing to the potential to have a water system out at the Y starting along Racetrack Lane. And so this kind of just came to light in the last few weeks, so kind of a little late in the game, but I reached out to staff and the applicant and said, would there be any interest in having a condition to waive the right to protest any inclusion into a RSID or water or sewer district in the event that we do build a water system right there.
Well,
So Andrew,
that this subdivision would be included. So that's why this condition.
So Andrew, just to cut to the chase here, so you're
Yeah.
in support of condition number 15.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to give you the on the record reasoning why, and I've completed that.
Okay, so that's a quasi public comment. Andrew's part of staff, so that we'll consider that in a staff report addendum there. So thank you for that.
You bet.
Oh, okay, additional public comment or quasi staff public comment. Anyone else want to comment on this proposal? All right, seeing none, let's pivot to questions. Josh and Juanita.
I've got one, and my back is sore, so I'm standing up. So looks like I'm leaving. I'm not really going anywhere. So Tim,
Yeah, go for it.
could you describe what you see the functional difference between having sidewalk wrapping the entirety of the cul-de-sac and sidewalk just going on one side, but with those crosswalks? I'm calling them crosswalks. I think the applicant may have used different language.
So I'm assuming, Josh, you're talking about the Ranger Road crossings
Yep.
that he showed. Okay.
Yep.
This is the first I've seen of those, so I'm not really familiar.
Okay.
Do you think, Don, can you put that slide, your last slide, back up again? That shows those crosswalks or whatever you're calling them.
Sort of looks like a question.
Yes, I will do
Yeah.
that. Let me find it here real quick. Way too many buttons to push.
If you go back, you can share this window. Yeah.
There you
Okay,
go.
does that do it?
Yeah.
So
Tim, what's-
Don, while Tim is collecting his thoughts on this image, could you describe again, Don, exactly what we are looking at by way of those larger red segments?
Yeah, and this is a fairly new thought, and so Tim is right. I've not mentioned this to Tim, but thinking about the fact that staff's recommendation was to have us provide sidewalk along that west side of Ranger and along the north side of Ranger. And one of the major comments, reasons why, was to provide pedestrian access to all those lots on the west side, lot 4, lot 8, and lot 14. Our thought was that a way to do that would be to provide a mid-block crossing, essentially a crosswalk, but a full pedestrian connection over to the intersection of lots 8 and 14 in this vicinity, and then just extend the sidewalk along the north portion of Ranger Road to extend to lot 4. We thought that that would accomplish that objective for pedestrian access to those lots.
So back to Josh's question, Tim, thoughts on this, recognizing this is the first you've seen of this?
Well, I think something to be considered. I've recommended crosswalks before that County Public Works on second blush out in the field wasn't too crazy about, and without, I guess maybe we have Shane on, but without them having the ability to weigh in on a crosswalk concept, I'm not sure what I think about it. Especially kind of a mid-block one and not one that's at a true intersection. I guess I don't know really what to comment on it. I mean, I think you're getting a little bit more walkway on that opposite side. What I couldn't see when I was writing up this variance is any particular hardship for just wrapping that walkway around that opposite side. I mean, it's a little bit more asphalt, but it's not leaps and bounds more asphalt.
Don, I guess back to you before we hear from Shane potentially. Is the only consideration here cost? Because as opposed to the fairly compelling case you made for variances to avoid having to put in sidewalk or a path on the west side of I guess on the opposite side of the road, west of the development. Is there any other rationale besides just saving dollars by doing the crosswalk and this tiny extension?
Yeah, I would say that cost is probably the major concern, and maybe that sidewalks on one side are consistent with the development patterns that have been occurring out there, even in recent approvals. So those would probably be the two reasons.
So
Even
Thanks. Shane.
So Dave, yeah, thanks, Dave. I was just going to see if Shane would.
Yeah, Shane, are you out there? Do you want to weigh in on this?
I am here, and I've been listening. Yeah, I think the challenges we face with the pedestrian facilities that are being proposed, and not just the crosswalk, but the asphalt sidewalks, is that 20 years down the road, that asphalt's probably gonna really be tore up. Mother Nature really gets after the asphalt versus the concrete. The crosswalk, I don't know. It's a little bit more of a maintenance challenge just because we have to stripe that crosswalk fairly regularly. Other than that, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You're looking at ADA facilities that are going to have to be potentially adjusted or replaced if there's uneven settlement and we're no longer meeting grades or slopes. But you're going to have that with the asphalt sidewalk or asphalt path as well too, because a lot of times you'll see quite a bit of settlement in those. So yeah, I don't know that there's a great solution here. Concrete sidewalks are the best option. If we're going to downgrade to save money, I completely understand that. Just off the cuff, listening to this presentation, I don't know that a crosswalk is any worse or better than an asphalt path.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Josh, Juanita, additional questions?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand the northern road connecting, is it called
Longacre.
Longacre? And whether it could connect or couldn't connect it, it can't connect, is that what I'm understanding?
Tim, could you address that? Because it seems like the absolute worst in infrastructure planning to potentially end up with two cul-de-sacs that
Yeah.
butt up against one another.
And they have to like drive around for emergency services to like get to the other side. But yeah, I don't understand it.
Yeah, Long
Tim?
Acres Lane now terminates it. You can turn if you go south on Alita and then west or right on Long Acres Lane. It terminates at present, and I think the developer of Long Addition number 2, the subdivision, I think there might be 14 lots within that subdivision, something like that.
16.
They specified at the time, or actually before platting, that they wanted that stretch of road to be exclusively used by lots within that subdivision only. And that's still their preference. I think they just want lesser traffic. They're concerned about cut through traffic, especially as the Y grows. That's a fear I heard from Jack McGillis, the person that commented. There's actually a comment attached to the staff report from Jack.
Yeah, I was struggling trying to understand that comment. So, okay, so the folks on the far west, like in the the far west, those are the folks that are cutting through and making kind of pioneer trails as across the land already. And they're saying that if there's
I
a
think it's
connected
further-
road, there's going to be more of that. Oh, maybe Don can explain.
Yeah, I think
Don-
that what I understand is that there's some extrapolation going on as far as some of the pioneer cut throughs that are happening now and what could happen in the future if you have, say, a big residential subdivision at the Y, where you're going to have folks wanting to cut, go down Racetrack and then make an southeastward cut. They might just say, oh, let's just cut over on Long Acres. And some of the warehouse users in particular in Jack Long Addition would just like to keep their traffic at a minimum. It's not good planning. I'll just say that on the record, but I'm not sure it's anything. I don't think we can force the issue if it's
Is
an
one
access
person's cut
easement
through
of
another
limited
person's
scope.
good traffic flow?
Wait, sorry,
yeah.
Tim, you're saying that like we can't connect the two? I was.
Well, I think they can be physically connected, but I think what Jack McGillis and his folks can do is they can put up a barrier. I don't know that there's anything that can stop them from doing that.
Understood.
Don,
Okay, so
Don, would you like to speak to this, please?
Yeah, I'd like it to be very clear on the record. We support the connection all the way through. We think it makes complete sense on so many different levels. Emergency vehicle access, Missoula Rural Fire made it very clear they want the connection through there. We're building a water system with a 500,000 gallon tank and fire hydrants that won't be accessible to that subdivision if there's not a connection through. We think it makes complete sense. So we will be very much in support of that, but we do understand that there is the condition on that adjacent plat that we don't have control over. So I just want to make sure we're clear on the record on that.
So Don, do you see any possibility of convincing your neighbors to potentially be receptive to having that connection?
We have made some entreaties that direction. We're hopeful, but we have not heard a response yet that makes us think that we can plan that direction. And so we are beginning to think about a cul-de-sac. Again, we would prefer not to do that. That is definitely not our preference.
If there's something that could be done to mitigate the potential negative impacts of having a road that flows completely through,
I don't quite understand.
what those negative impacts would be.
Maybe I'm just not being very
Well,
creative.
more perceived as more traffic, I'm assuming. And if you perceive more traffic as a bad thing, then you might be in favor of a barricade. I don't know.
John,
And
you,
it's a private road, right, John? We got nothing to say there.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make me wonder back in the day how that came to be a private road, but that presumably was something someone else, the hand that they dealt us. So, additional questions.
with the
I guess
water,
Yeah,
oh, go
yeah, that's
ahead,
good.
Dave.
That needs to be talked about.
Yeah, so I guess would be along those lines. Tim, what is your sense of the proposed condition number 14?
Yeah, I think it's a good middle ground, if you will, as far as like, we always knew that this subdivision was on the road towards securing a water right. And we weren't sure what kind of condition might be optimal, like making them secure a water right by phase 2 might be an example, but I think it's better if an applicant can come up with a mitigation on their own, and they've done that. And I think this is a positive step forward. I think the conditions recommended by the applicant work. I've read through them and I think they work.
Both
Thanks, Tim.
13, 14, and 15?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Juanita.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, that got what was in my head too. I have the sense that if the current water situation now had been described to the planning board a few weeks ago, they would have voted differently. But there's a lot of hypothetical there, but
I made that assumption as well,
it
but
does seem like the concerns have been addressed.
Tim,
Tim, do you feel like that's accurate?
I think it's possible
okay.
that they,
Okay.
I mean, there's a side to planning board that strongly advocates against water rights exemptions in most cases. And I don't know if you can get over that hump with this, or I don't honestly know, but I think it's possible it could have gone the other way, or at least been maybe a little bit more split.
Okay.
so slightly different topic. Tim or Shane, but I'll start with you, Tim. As far as asphalt path versus concrete sidewalk, I totally hear Shane's concern because I've seen some pretty decrepit looking asphalt paths that have gone into some subdivisions in the past, and of course I've seen some concrete sidewalks that have not last anywhere close to the 100-year-old sidewalk in front of my house either. But in terms of our subdivision regulations, what is required and what is discretionary on the part of an applicant? Or what requires a variance, I guess, as it relates to not the location of, but the actual substance by which a sidewalk or path is constructed.
There's a little bit of flexibility in the regulations. It has to be a hard surface. And one of the modifications that were made a few years back is that there's really no place for gravel trails. That's what really got us in trouble, where we permitted gravel trails that are now just completely enveloped by weeds. But the way the regulations read is that sidewalks shall be constructed of concrete unless an alternative material is approved to be consistent with the subdivision design and overall development plan or the Missoula Active Transportation Plan. So there is some flexibility as to the material.
So asphalt is allowable then.
Yeah, I mean, the highest standard I think clearly is concrete sidewalk, but asphalt is permissible. There's there's room for it within the language of the regulations.
Other questions, Josh or Juanita? Are we ready to roll through the motions?
Juan just had to step out to the bathroom, but I personally feel ready, but we can wait till Juan comes back.
Yeah, let's wait till she comes back. How about as far as so we've got the waiver to protest related to
Right,
certain
from
subset
Joey.
of it.
Anytime
certain
tomorrow after 2, or do you want to play Saturday?
I'm sorry. Oh, might have a side conversation going on there. Tim, so as far as just want to be clear, waiver of right to protest. If at such a point in time in the future, it actually might make sense to have curb and gutter out there, and that the mechanism to install that would be through an SID or an RSID. Is there, I think I know the answer, but just want to confirm, is there a waiver to the right to protest that scenario?
There is indeed a waiver of the right to protest that includes curb and gutter.
Okay.
That's well included.
My screen is so tiny, I'm having trouble seeing. It has
Juan's
Juanita
back.
reemerged?
Yeah,
I am back. Did you guys solve the
Okay.
concrete and asphalt recipes?
Yeah, we just learned that gravel isn't suitable. Concrete is the highest standard, and asphalt is acceptable.
God, thank you for that. Okay.
All right, Tim, why don't you pull up the motions for us to consider? All right, so we've got the variances here before us. Any more questions from anyone?
Okay, I just want to reiterate, like the last 3 weeks since planning board made this decision, because I do feel a little hiccupy, where I guess I'm showing my cards here, but going against planning board recommendations, that I don't generally, we don't do that, but I feel like we have new information now and things have been adjusted, and I feel comfortable with this as is, but how do you guys feel?
Well, it's
I feel okay, 'cause
totally,
it was 3-3, so it was kind of, they made no recommendation. They didn't say don't do it. They didn't say do it. They were deadlocked.
and it's totally within our discretion to do something other than planning board's recommendation. And in fact, the perspective from which we look at these proposals is different than many planning board members are viewing it from. So
Then I move to approve the request to vary from section 3473, requiring curb and gutter and boulevard construction for Ranger Road, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. Do I do all 4 of them?
Yeah, do we want to do all 4 of these?
if we are okay doing them as a block, if we're going to have any dissent or further discussion,
Why don't you take them one at a time?
Okay.
All right, I'll second that. Then I'll move number 2. I move to approve the request to vary.
Oh, we gotta vote.
well, we got to vote on
That's
number
four.
1.
Sorry. Yes, sir.
So before we go on, just for clarification, Tim, the variance request that staff recommended denying, where is that?
That
That's on
is,
Ranger Road.
that's on Ranger
Is that-
Road, but that's the walkway.
That's
So
a
that
curb
would
Oh,
be-
this
gutter.
is curb. Okay,
This
this
is
is
all-
curb and gutter.
Yeah, this is the curb and
Okay.
gutter bundle, and we'll move on to the walkway bundle next.
Okay, let's take bite-sized chunks of the curb and gutter bundle.
yeah,
So we have
Curb and gutter
we have a
set.
motion and a second on the first variance request. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 2.
All right, I would move to approve the request to vary from sections 3.4.7.3 requiring curb, gutter, and boulevard construction for Long Acres Lane, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
Further discussion on this one? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. I move to approve the request to vary from section 3473 requiring curb, gutter, and boulevard construction for Moccasin Lane, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
Further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 4.
I'd move to approve the request to vary from section 3.4.7.3 requiring curb, gutter, and boulevard construction for Racetrack Lane, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
Further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye. And does that say, that says note recommendation, but I meant to say no, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it should say no recommendation. Good catch.
Okay, let's take the next bundle. Pedestrian facilities.
So can I ask one pedestrian facility question?
Yes, please do.
So, and this is for Shane. So Shane, you talked about how the maintenance on asphalt, well, that maintenance is the right word, that it's going to fall apart more quickly than a concrete sidewalk.
Correct.
Right? And then you did say that there's a little bit of a pain in the butt if we were to go the route that the developers wanted to with less asphalt, but the pain in the butt for you guys would be the repeated striping of the crosswalks because that paint wears off fairly quickly. Is that correct?
Yep.
So who is on the hook here for doing the maintenance on the asphalt path?
Are you asking me that, or is that a question?
Yeah. No, I'm asking you. I don't know that. I don't know the answer because I'm.
Yeah, and I don't either. I don't know, Tim. Is this a subdivision where Public Works would take over maintenance of the streets and roads?
Well, we have a condition that basically requires private road maintenance in the event that County Public Works doesn't accept these roads for county maintenance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do
Josh.
they have to ask?
Yeah. So what do you think, Shane?
I think it's the road is probably not a challenge. If we have to maintain the pedestrian facilities in the future, the first 15 years, maybe even 20 years is probably not a problem, but
Okay.
I think when you look at ADA, the requirements that are there, a 5-foot shared use, or not even shared, I wouldn't call it a shared use path, a 5-foot path that's made of asphalt, I think it potentially falls apart sooner, and it becomes a maintenance challenge for somebody in the next 20 years. It's certainly not going to be me, but I think where we're at is we're faced with having to deal with these asphalt paths that were built in the past, and there's no good solution for them.
Okay. So what I was trying to calculate in my head was which is the least pain in the butt, the restriping of the crosswalks or the additional maintenance on asphalt if both sides of the cul-de-sac are covered in it, in the asphalt path.
Yeah, I think the striping of a crosswalk is pretty simple. It's one of those things where it just takes time, right? And so you just don't have a ton of staff time to spend on pavement markings. But it's, as far as the simplicity, that's an easier one to manage.
Okay, well, in that case then, and I'm not even reading these, I'm just speaking. Yeah. I'd be fine with the asphalt path on one side of the cul-de-sac with the crosswalks, given that imagine it will functionally work and will be less maintenance for our folks and be less cost for the developer. So it's like a win-win, but the W's aren't in capitals.
Like Don's last slide, what he
Correct,
suggested.
Correct, yes, yes.
Tim, could you speak to this? I'm still not convinced at all that cutting the corners like this is preferable. And again, just for clarification, when it says 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Ranger Road, are we to read that as saying 5-foot asphalt paths on each side?
Yes, that's the condition. I think it's condition number 10 does reinforce the 5-foot wide asphalt path set up throughout the project. And it clarifies that our recommendation is for 5-foot wide asphalt pathways on both sides of Ranger. But it could be modified. Condition 10 could be modified to accommodate what's been shown today from Don.
Just had some guy just like walk in there and you talk to them.
Hey, Zach,
Like, checked
we
in,
can hear you. I'm not sure why Zach is up.
He muted himself.
Okay. I mean, if it's the board's preference to basically implement what Don presented, I guess what I would do is I would recommend approval of the variance number 5, and then I can give you language for a modified condition number 10.
And Dave, I came to this, I'm certainly sensitive to the developer's needs to save money, and that isn't unique to this project. What really got me was hearing Shane talk about having to rebuild this thing in 15, 20 years. And if we could functionally get to the same level of service for pedestrians with having less path to maintain, I think that would be a win for us and a minor victory, but a delightful one nonetheless for the developers.
I guess going back to Tim, though, is cost a legitimate concern to grant a variance?
Not really.
Except for what I'm saying, Dave, is that's kind of like an added bonus. If on our side, I'm thinking this is less that our public works folks are going to have to replace in 15, 20 years, and we're going to get functionally the same level of service for pedestrians. So it's saving us time, effort, money, and it's going to save the developer some money, but that isn't my inspiration here nearly as much as what I learned from Shane, that we're going to have to replace these in not too long, and having less of them to replace would be better.
I guess going back to Tim, though, is even that a legitimate rationale for granting a variance request?
Well, I think commissioners, you have a fair amount of discretion in what you approve for variances. Typically, hardship is really the essence of a variance, and cost is usually something you want to shy away from as being a legitimate basis. But I think Josh is talking about sort of a long-term replacement cost as opposed to like a developer cost.
Big difference there is I'm talking about cost to the public.
Yeah.
Not cost to the developer, but cost to the public, because it's the public that would be funding that replacement of the asphalt path for whoever's standing in Shane's shoes 15, 20 years from now. And if we're going to get functionally the same level of service for pedestrians, let's save the public some money.
And that's why I wasn't sure about it. They have to replace like the whole thing, because the whole thing's going to fall apart in 15
Well,
years.
yeah, and what I'm going with is it's less to replace. I mean, it's not.
I guess
much,
that
but it's less to replace.
For me, that begs the question why we are allowing asphalt paths in the first place if they're going to be falling apart in 15 years.
Because it'll be 15 years before enough people start using them to warrant, like, I mean, it's going to be a while before people are like walking on them, like the way that the regulations are designed.
I need to be settled.
Yeah, for this area to be settled.
So within 15 years from now, there will be knapweed poking up through them, and before even anyone sets foot on these things.
That's what I'm, yeah.
Andrew, what do you think? You got planner and economic developer shoes. What do you think?
Man, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion.
John, do you have a strong opinion?
I don't have a strong opinion from a legal standpoint, and I don't know if there's any validity to it or not. I'm not questioning it, but I think we heard from either the applicant or perhaps from staff that asphalt paths on one side of the road, as long as they provide connectivity, is the precedent that we've set in similar subdivisions that are similarly situated, maybe even in the same area. Maybe I'm expounding on what I thought I heard, but I think that's something that you want to consider, and maybe you can get some clarification on some of that too, to the extent that I had it wrong.
And given the levels of use for this, it's an industrial subdivision, et cetera, that is okay with me. We're not talking about schools and homes and kids walking to school and people walking dogs and pushing strollers. It's a different level of use.
Yeah, I don't share. I try not to share those kind of views.
Okay.
Tim, do you want to speak to what John just said there?
I think what John was referencing was that with Riverside subdivision, there was a similar scenario. And this is the walkway on the opposite side of the road scenario where it benefits the subdivision on the opposite side of the road, but doesn't really benefit the subdivision before us today. I think that was the context that he was speaking to, and I'm not sure it necessarily applies to Ranger, but yeah, that was the similarity. You definitely have that similarity along the western edge of the subdivision, along Racetrack, where if you enforce the regulation, you're building a sidewalk along that western edge of Racetrack, and it doesn't really function in a way that benefits this subdivision at all. So we've seen that in the past as sort of a proportionality problem.
Okay. Shane, after all of that, anything else that you would like to add?
The only other thing I would add is I know on Roller Coaster there was a subdivision that had concrete sidewalks that were just put in the not too distant past. So I would say in the same area we also have concrete sidewalks. So.
Well, what kind of subdivision is that? Is it a residential?
No, it's industrial.
Oh.
At least I think it's industrial. Yeah, but and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if you are familiar with that subdivision, but it does have concrete sidewalks. So.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
So my comment may not have much weight.
All right, any additional thoughts? So the options right now are to reframe number 5 in the affirmative, or I guess that would be basically it, and then there would be modifications to what condition number
10.
and 10, if that's what we want to go, or we can vote on what is presented here.
Okay.
I could.
Oh, okay,
I'm
go ahead.
happy to.
Yeah.
I'm just not quite sure how to say it right.
You
This
just
one.
you've replaced denied with approve.
Okay. So I move to approve. So
Approve.
I move to approve the request to vary from section 3.4.9, requiring 5-foot sidewalk. No, I don't want to do that.
But
Something
we wanna allow them
screwy
to
with
vary
this.
it. This is on Ranger Road.
Yeah, so if what I want to do, Tim, and you guys can be for or against it, obviously, is to say no to the sidewalks on both sides. Just do sidewalk on one side with the 2 crosswalks.
Yeah, I think I agree that this wording is not what it ought to be.
Something's fouled up with the language that we're
Let
seeing
me
here.
jump out here. If I can do it.
Yeah, that's correct,
Is that all right?
right? Because we're
No.
approving the variance.
I think if I
No,
get rid
no.
of this denied language here, that should do the trick. Let's,
Yeah,
does that make
that would
sense? Oops,
that
now I
makes
got it.
sense now.
Okay, because I got it. We're the.
There was just an extra phrase in there.
All right, I move to approve the request to vary from section 3.4.9.1, requiring 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Ranger Road, subject to the recommended conditions of approval, which would be.
That's what I wanted to clarify. The conditions of approval are what the applicant submitted today, showing an extension of sidewalk partially on one side of Ranger Road to lot number something, and then a crosswalk.
Exactly.
Two
Well, it was
crosswalks.
an extension and a crosswalk.
Or is there
The one
two?
on top was an extension, and the one on the bottom, and the one in the middle was a crosswalk.
There aren't two crosswalks?
No, I think.
Oh, it was just
I
a
was
thick-
calling it a crosswalk.
Okay, it's just
It
a
was
thick line.
band,
They're two
but
thick
it's
lines.
really an extension.
Got it.
Tim, please untangle this for us. So this would be a companion to a modified condition 10. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, and I'll read through condition 10. I think it will do the trick for what you're looking for. Plans for an installation of 5-foot wide asphalt pathways along subdivision roadways as depicted on the preliminary plat shall be reviewed and approved by Public Works and the Planning Office prior to final plat approval of each phase. Plans for Ranger Road walking extensions / crosswalks that provide connections to lots as depicted at the Board of County Commissioners public hearing shall be reviewed and approved by Public Works and the Planning Office prior to final plat approval of the appropriate phase.
And we'll insert Don's slide.
Okay, so that is the language. So
So I moved 5.
I will second 5.
We got a second on 5.
any further discussion on number 5? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to number 6.
Okay, I move to approve the request to vary from section 3491, requiring 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Long Acres Lane, be approved subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
Yeah, the language there is a little odd, but I think the gist of it is
Approve the request to vary.
I move to I think that second be approved can be
Yeah, I think I've added be approves that don't need to be in there.
Okay.
Let's get rid of
Approve
them.
those extra be approves.
I approved that.
I will take a mulligan. Okay. I move to approve the request to vary from section 3491, requiring 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Long Acres Lane, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Second that.
any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
7.
Move to approve the request to vary from section 3491, requiring 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Moccasin Lane, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to approve the request to vary from section 3491, requiring 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Racetrack Lane, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I would move that the Grass Valley Industrial Subdivision be approved based on the findings of fact, conclusions of law in the staff report, and subject to the recommended conditions of approval in the staff report as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? I guess I will just chime in that I do, as always, appreciate the planning board's careful deliberations and considerations of all of this, and it's not lost on me that their point of concern about developments that are occurring outside of the city limits that eventually might be within the city and built to different standards. I've seen that play out in the past, and it's not an invalid or inconsequential concern. In the case at hand, though, I think what's being proposed seems to be prudent and legitimate. So any further discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Don and Matt, go forth.
Thank you for your time and consideration. Very much appreciated.
Thanks for your
All right.
patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oof, that was only the first one.
I know.
I get to leave.
Oh, okay. No parking zones. So we've got two public hearings here related to proposed no parking zones. They're in different locations, so we probably should take these as individual standalone items. The first one is a public hearing on a no parking zone on Waterside Drive. Shane.
Yep. Thanks, Commissioner Strohmeyer. And I hope this goes a heck of a lot quicker than the last one. Can somebody allow me to share my screen and I can maybe just share the exhibits for both of these?
Working on it.
Okay,
Okay, should be good.
awesome. Thank you. I'm definitely trying here, but it is not. Let me see if I can do a window. Try this one. All right. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
perfect. All right, so maybe zoom out just a little bit, just to give you a sense of where we're at. Both of these parking zones happen to both be in the East Missoula area, but this first one on Waterside Drive would begin at the intersection with Waterside Drive and Deer Creek Road and terminate at the end of the existing Waterside Drive termination where the road ends today, essentially. This was spurred on by the Aspire subdivision. I'll move my screen. There's a large subdivision proposed just to the south of Waterside Drive. As a result of that, I think we've got the HOA folks have requested that we create a no parking resolution or pass a no parking resolution and restrict parking on the east side of Waterside Drive. Just to help with the potential impacts of traffic from the future subdivision if and when it happens. So
Shane,
I know
is parking on the east side of Waterside Drive now an issue?
I don't know, and I would lean on the folks that are here from the HOA, and I wanted to mention too, the HOA is requesting this, so they obviously represent the folks that live in that subdivision. So I would imagine that if you live on Waterside Drive, you're in support of this. If your HOA is supporting it, so. I don't know, John, if you wanted to add anything more to this. I know you've been involved in it probably a little bit more in depth than I have.
Yeah, let me add a little more context. So the Water's Edge subdivision,
I remember that one.
when it was initially given preliminary approval, the plan, the written plan was to have parking on one side of Waterside Drive. And it was presumed that that would be the west side of the street, the one that isn't immediately adjacent to the lots.
Who
That
parks there? Parking for who?
Guess.
guess of the HOA park there now. And that didn't happen for one reason or another. So on one hand, this is just following through on the plan from the very beginning, but also, and Commissioner Slotnick, you might have missed the admin meeting where we brought a memorandum of agreement between Missoula County and the Waters Edge HOA. This was within the last couple of months, where in exchange for dedicating trail easements between the river and the homes, and clarifying some other issues with those common areas and riverfront trails that, again, are going to, if there's a subdivision, an Aspire subdivision will eventually connect, and that was the grand vision back in the day. In exchange for the HOA helping perfect those trail easements, Missoula County agreed to do several things on Waterside Drive, including passing, considering, we didn't guarantee your votes. We agreed to consider no parking on one side of Waterside Drive. And when Shane and I brought that MOA to the to you at your admin meeting within the last couple months, it might have been Commissioner Strohmeyer, it might have been Commissioner Vero, or both of you just said, well, why don't we do it now? Why don't we? Because the plan was to wait to do this if and when there was really a subdivision there and they would see an increase in traffic. Okay.
I like the trade-off for trail easements.
Yeah, no, it was a very good collaborative agreement.
Great.
And Andrew Hers, the HOA president, is here with us today to correct whatever I've said that's not right or add additional context. But that's why we're here today, even though, and Andrew can correct me, but I don't think parking today is a big problem on this street, but it was envisioned that there would never be parking on one side of the street. And we just figured, why not make it right now? We don't need to wait for this Aspire subdivision.
Okay.
So
Again, we're just opening this, when does this close?
it'll close after a
August.
second hearing. We'll set a second
August.
hearing in either August or September.
Okay.
It's August 8th. I've already got it scheduled. It's August 8th.
Okay, so before we go to public comment or hear from the Waters Edge HOA, anything else that you'd want to share, Shane? And again, this is opening up the public hearing today.
Thanks for the
Correct.
context.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to add. And thanks for the additional information, John.
All right, thanks, Shane. Would anyone representing Waters Edge HOA like to speak? And I see Frank and Holly with your hand up. Are you representatives of the HOA? Do we have a representative of the HOA here who would like to speak on behalf of the petitioners? Okay, well, if not, Frank and Holly, go ahead.
Well, this is Frank, and I am a
Okay.
member of the HOA. And Andrew was unable to get connected properly, so he is listing in with me and would like to speak. He's our president of the HOA. So Andrew,
Excellent.
go ahead.
Andrew. Yeah, Andrew, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my apologies. I was at the library and connection at home and was sitting through the previous hearing. I thought maybe I'd get home before, and of course, lucky as I didn't. But all we're doing is closing the loop on what county approved of the variance for the road width, because it was, the standard is, I believe, 4-inch right-of-way road width, with the understanding there would be one side of parking only. And now all we're doing is codifying which side that is, and this is sort of closing the loop on multiple hanging chads with regards to the water's edge before the aspired subdivision goes in. So we don't see this as anything that's controversial. In fact, what we're doing is helping county close the loop on what they approved back in 2008.
Thanks, Andrew. Much appreciated. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this today? Anyone else out there? Okay, so Shane, when are we going to again take this up?
August 8th. This is on the agenda to close the hearing and make it a decision.
Okay. So we've got a little bit of time for folks to weigh in if they would like. So thanks, everyone. We will keep the public hearing open until August 8th. Thank you. So let's roll into the second no parking zone public hearing. This is related to Sunnyside Court. Shane.
Correct. All right. Let me share my screen again, see if I can get it to work this time. All right. So Sunnyside Court is just a stone's throw from the last parking resolution we were talking about. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit here. This is the East Missoula area, Waterside Drive being here. And then if you just go to the north, we are looking at Sunnyside Court. So the challenge we face, and this is just a short segment. It's basically the frontage on call it the south side of Sunnyside Court, just along property 4751. So the Sunny Meadows Sewer and Water District owns this property. There is already a no parking restriction or resolution along Highway 200. The reason why the Sewer and Water District would like to have a no parking resolution on Sunnyside Court just for this short distance is that the DEQ has reached out to the district and recommended, or highly recommended, I guess, that they avoid having vehicles park near or adjacent to this property because there is a well here. This is where the water is pumped out of the ground to service the homes that are in the Sunny Meadows water and sewer district. So really this is at the direction and request of DEQ to reduce the amount of vehicles that are in the area of the well. Granted, we fully recognize vehicles are driving by the well, but I think what they're trying to prevent is vehicles parked and leaking fluids, and then those fluids eventually infiltrate into the well. So
And
that's kind of the background on it.
I bet on a hot sunny day, when the parking lot fills up, people park there.
Yeah, I would imagine they do, Josh. And I will tell you too, the folks that I visited with from the Sewer and Water District, they were trying to get on and they were having lots of challenges. I've been having phone conversations with them on and off during the meeting, and they just were unable to connect today. At least I don't think they were able to. Maybe they're on, but
So is there anyone on from the Sunny Meadows Sewer and Water District? Okay.
Were they telling you anything, Shane?
Well, they're in full support of
they're
the
supportive.
restriction. Yeah, and
they're the ones who brought it to us.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
anyone else? Anyone else want to comment on this? And we are just opening up the public hearing today, and presumably this too will be heard again on August 8th. Is that correct, Shane?
Yeah, correct.
Anyone else out there?
Commissioner Strohmeyer, can I ask Shane Stack a question?
You absolutely may.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, yes. Who's joining us here?
This is Paula Nickham and Cindy Wingo from the homeowners, the Water System Board. We've had a devil of a time getting a hold of you guys and a hard time unmuting. So we're here now.
Okay.
We're here now, and we do have something to say.
Okay. Well, this is your moment to say it. So go right ahead.
Okay, well, in reviewing what we could do and the complaints of many of the people in the area about hitting people, blowing up their rafts in the middle of the highway, my main concern is the fact that we are under DEQ restriction, that we have 2 wells in that lot, and that there is a 100-foot radius well protection zone that is protected by Montana state law. I sent the documents to Shane, where we can be fined heavily and never be able to afford our water if they find contaminants in our wells as a result of the parking going around that lot. I'm not sure if Shane received my message where I realized that I did not give him the right information, that request for the no parking zone needed to be extended further north, as the resident that lives in the house adjacent to that lot, 75% of her property, she cannot use any chemicals at all, fertilizers, nothing, because of the proximity to that well. So in my opinion, that coverage should also be restricted. If there's any chance that we could have that zone created, it would really help us, protect our water.
Shane, did you receive that? And would any modification to what's being proposed trigger kind of restarting this process?
I'll defer to John on restarting the process if we want to change it. And I don't know, I don't think I received the request, but I can certainly run through my emails and we can adjust the exhibit. Really, it's just going to be a matter of, I think, adjusting the exhibit more than anything.
John, do we have
the street, or is it to the neighbor house?
To the north?
Which way is, I mean,
To the north.
north across the street or just west? That one? Okay.
Yeah, we can get some of this clarified between now and August 8th. I assume, Shane, you have this one scheduled for August 8th also.
Correct.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we have 2 hearings on a no parking resolution is to accommodate changes that might come up at the first hearing. And it's also because these include civil penalties. And so the law requires us to have 2 hearings. I don't think we need to have a 3rd hearing. This was noticed up. We can make modifications to the resolution and the exhibit between now and the 2nd hearing. That'll be posted as part of the agenda for the 2nd meeting. And that's the kind of thing that you might anticipate coming up at the 1st hearing. So let's go forward. If it's appropriate and justified to add no parking in front of the adjacent parcel or part of the adjacent parcel, let's go ahead and do that.
John, so in terms of public notice, how do we ensure that the adjoining property owner is aware of this change? Because they might be perfectly fine with no parking on the parcel as depicted here, but if it's now no parking in front of their property, they're probably going to want to know about that.
Yeah, I've spoken to the owners of the property and asked if she would want to be included in that. And she said that actually people, when the lot fills up, that they've been parking in front of her property with their vehicles. And so that actually keeps her from using that part of her property. And it also is within the 100-foot radius of a well. It extends out into the street. So
yeah,
she was going to try to join the meeting today, but she was working, so I'm not sure. I think that if she was able to, she would chime in now. Her name is Natalie Morrow.
Thank you. So I guess back to you, John, just in terms of public notice, how does it work in situations like this?
Well, one option would be to have Shane Stack contact that individual and verify that person wants to be included. Something tells me that every single person on Sunnyside Court would like to be included.
Yes.
We would like that parking on the highway something to be done because we're almost hitting children, So that's a whole other issue than
We did build a parking lot and pass a no parking resolution.
That is a whole different issue that we can talk about it in a different
and
context.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. I apologize. But
no,
we just basically want to protect our water source and want to be able to assure that we're going to have clean, safe water and that we don't end up losing the ability to pay for our own water.
So why don't we do this? This is what I propose. Shane, can you figure out the minimum no parking strip that's necessary to keep vehicles out of that 100-foot well isolation zone that Cindy Wenchel's referring to, and then work with Mike Tester to adjust the exhibit, and we can contact if additional length is necessary, you can contact the adjacent property owner.
Yeah, I can. I can. Yeah, we can figure out that length and then work with the property owner and make sure that they either can attend the next hearing or at least have a comment that they can share.
Yeah, an email or letter.
That sounds
Shane,
great.
Shane, I can forward her information to you.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Sue, I see your hand. You've been patiently holding your hand up here. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering, because this is the residential area directly across from the new Shawron parking area, and it appears that it's being requested for the no parking along there because of the DEQ requirements. And I know this has kind of been, which it sounds like is being considered a separate issue in getting that whole area as no parking because of the overflow from the parking lot. Can we not kill two birds with one stone in this case and get as much of that as no parking at the same time as?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I would say no. And part of my reason is we could sign every square inch of that entire neighborhood with no parking. And we just do not have, even as you've probably seen right now on Brickyard Hill, we don't have the law enforcement capacity to enforce what we have. So just adding at this point, in my opinion, is additional signage that's not hyper focused for, in this case, there's a clear water quality issue and legal issue that DEQ has alerted the sewer and water district to. I think there's some broader issues in terms of needing to figure out people's parking behavior that I would not want to bog down the sewer and water district's request with the broader issue at this point.
Of course. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. The parking issue is not lost on us though. Other thoughts, other comments from folks? And again, the public hearing will be open until August 8th, and we'll take it up again.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, we'll see folks back on August 8th for more discussions of parking.
Parking.
Okay, boundary line relocation, just to keep things spicy here for us. So Klaus, boundary line relocation and aggregation and right of way for good measure. Zach.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully this is not that spicy. Hopefully it won't take up too much more of anyone else's time at this hearing. Let me share my screen, bring up the presentation. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the item I'm presenting on is a boundary line relocation, aggregation, and right-of-way creation. I forgot to fill out these couple items, but the claimant is Dale Klaus, and it is located just west of the Walmart on Mullen Road, and they're represented by Woith Engineering Incorporated. And again, I'm Zach Jones, planner with Planning Development and Sustainability at the county. I've highlighted the location of the subject parcels here. As I said, Walmart is right here. This is the corner of Mullen and
Zach,
Reserve.
we're not following you, or your slides are.
If you could make it full screen, presentation mode, and then advance it, that would be great.
Oh, I thought it, okay. Something weird happened here. Hold on. Share screen. Okay, so you should be able to see just my PowerPoint. It's not in presentation mode yet. And then
It is not in presentation mode.
Yep. Okay, do you see it in presentation mode now?
No.
No. Oh yeah. Well, it's not advancing. We just see like your title slide.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to manually advance it, I guess.
Okay. I wonder if I can share it in a different way. Do you see the second slide now?
Yes.
Okay, this should hopefully work from here on out. Yeah, so as I was saying before, the subject properties are located west of Walmart and the corner of Mullen Road and Reserve Street. And I've highlighted them in red here. There are 9 subject parcels, which we'll have a map showing those in a second. So these are the 9 parcels or tracts of record that are included in this application. Currently there's 4 tracks that are located along Mullen Road, and then 5 more tracks that are farther south that are currently used for sort of an agricultural use. There's a poplar farm there where the city actually leases the land in order to use for wastewater purposes. And this tract here where my cursor is highlighted or is over is actually like a utility lot that is owned by Northwestern Energy, and that is not a part of this application. So that will remain the same. after this boundary line relocation. And these tracks are actually remnants from railroad right-of-way. So the proposal is to relocate the boundary lines of these 9 tracks to create additional parcel that can be accessed from Mullen Road. So instead of there being the 4 that are currently there off of Mullen, there would be 5. And then also to create a right-of-way parcel along Mullen Road. And you'll see in the next slide the proposed layout that is tract 9. And that is to be dedicated to the city of Missoula for right-of-way along Mullen Road, presumably for some future improvements. And then also aggregation of any underlying unidentified tracks. So those would be tracks that may exist from the, usually it's section lines that are bisecting tracks. So those will be aggregated. And this is one of the proposed layout slides. As you can see, some of the changes, there was 2 tracks here where my cursor is, and there will only be 1, and that kind of allows to create another tract up towards Mullen Road. And then we'll go to detail showing that. So this is the proposed layout for the tracks along Mullen Road. There would be 5. Currently, there's 2 houses on 2 of these tracks, track 2 and track 4. And then the right-of-way that I mentioned would be located right here, labeled as track 9, just along Mullen Road. And the floodplain boundary is actually delineated on here as well. So everything to the south of this line, which might be a little bit hard to see, but roughly tracing it with my cursor here, is actually located within designated floodplain, but it is not intended for residential or any sort of development use. It's going to continue to be used for agricultural purposes, which is allowable within the floodplain. And this is just a little bit about the zoning on the properties. This darker green color is AGR, or Agriculture Reserve, and it will continue to be used for agriculture, like I said. These properties that are, or parcels that are accessed off of Mullen Road are zoned NR, which is Neighborhood Residential, which is a residential focused zoning designation where actually the zoning requires a minimum density of 8 homes per acre. And currently there's 2 houses on a couple of those lots already. So that is intended for future residential development. So a little bit about some of the general evasion criteria and rebuttable presumptions that we review when we're looking at subdivision exemptions. The first of which is if the claimant is in the business of construction or dividing, developing, or selling land. So Dale Klaus, the property owner, I believe Klaus Properties LLC is actually listed as the owner, but he's involved with that LLC, is actually the president of Missoula Concrete Construction, and they specialize in construction of precast concrete on commercial projects. Now, this boundary line relocation doesn't really have anything to do with any commercial projects, as it's zoned for residential development and intended for that. So that's not a criteria that we are considering to be for subdivision evasion. And then there was also a boundary line relocation on one of the tracks, which is track 9 of the existing tracks of record, described on COS 6158, and I can actually go back to show which one that was. So that is this current tract was created through boundary line relocation. And then another one is if the division will result in a pattern of development equivalent to a subdivision without local government review. So this division will result in 6 or more tracks, although calling it a division just regarding the boundary line relocation is somewhat of a misnomer because the boundary line relocation does not actually create any more tracks than are already there. And then we do not think that there is a development plan equivalent to a subdivision. It's really just kind of moving boundary lines to create one more lot that could be used for development along Mullen Road. And there already are several lots and houses that are there. And it's not adjacent to any other platted subdivisions and doesn't really contain any improvements or infrastructure that would often be associated with a subdivision. So on to a couple of agency comments. This one from Matt Heimel, our county floodplain administrator. This is just a summary of the comment because it was very extensive. So the entire thing is in the staff report. But this boundary line relocation will result in tracks or portions of tracks that would be within the Clark Fork River hazard area, which I kind of talked about the floodplain and where it's located earlier. However, the application and supporting documentation states that these tracks aren't intended for any building purposes or development. They actually intend to sell the southern tracks to the city to maintain the same use that is already going on there currently. So with the existing poplar farm and wastewater project that is there. Now, if anyone was to actually try to do any development in the floodplain, it would require a floodplain permit, and they would have to meet requirements for that. And just this is the mapped floodplain showing where that was. I kind of traced it on the proposed lot layout earlier, but just so you can see it a little more extensively. Where it's located, this red and black cross-hatched is actually just city land. So this is right at the border of the city and the county where it currently stands. And this darker red color is actually floodway, which as you can see, that's kind of closer to the Clark Fork River. And this is just 100-year floodplain. And another comment from the county clerk and recorder's office. So one requirement for the right-of-way creation exemption is that there is a notarized document submitted that shows the purpose and acceptance, I guess, of the right-of-way by the grantee. So the city of Missoula would be the ones that are accepting this right-of-way. And this document never arrived at the clerk and recorder's office, and it sounds like there may have been a bit of a mix-up from the city trying to submit that to the clerk and recorders. However, this same document would be required for actually recording the survey after this is approved, and when they, actually go out and try to survey all the lines and try to file them, they would need to have this anyways. So approving this right-of-way exemption would not create a problem with the county subdivision regulations, as that would be required upon filing anyways.
It is a very long distance from City Hall to the clerk and recorder's office, so it's understandable how the document got lost.
It went via Spokane.
Yeah, so
the new mail route.
I believe I actually tried to talk to tried to get in contact with someone from the city today, but I believe they're actually not at work, I think due to the storm.
Hey, look who's at work, the county. So,
Yeah.
okay,
So anyways,
continue on.
yeah, so with that, our staff recommendations for the 3 of these exemptions are approval and the boundary line relocation, the aggregation, and right-of-way creation. And I have recommended motions, but I'm guessing you probably have some questions that you might want to ask me. And I believe the applicant's representative, Logan Jacobs from Voith Engineering, is also here and available. So,
Okay, let's
yeah.
do that. Thank you, Zach. Is the applicant or applicant's representative on the line, and would you like to say anything?
Hello. Zach, you did a good job summarizing that. I have nothing else to add.
If you could do us the favor of stating your name for the record, that would be great.
Oh, this is Logan Jacobs with
Okay,
Voith Engineering.
Thank you, Logan. Before we go to questions, is there any public comment? Anyone on the line who would like to comment on this proposed boundary line relocation, aggregation, and right-of-way? Okay. Questions, Josh and Juanita?
I actually feel pretty good about this from hearing about it the second time, and I'm really glad to hear that the city's going to buy the Poplar Farm. So I feel good about this.
Yeah, likewise. I'm grateful that you showed us this on Tuesday, so.
Yeah, and I see the complexity, but it all works.
Okay, let's run through these motions.
Yeah, move that the request by Dale Klaus and Klaus Property LLC to utilize the boundary line relocation exemption as presented in the exemption application affidavit be approved. Oops, sorry, am I reading the wrong one? I move to approve the request. Move to approve the request by Dale Klaus and Klaus Property LLC to utilize the boundary line relocation and aggregation exemptions as presented in the exemption application and affidavit.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? And now, Zach, this is the time when you flip back to the other different set of motions for us. No, just joking. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I would move to approve the request by Dale Klaus and Klaus Property LLC to utilize the right-of-way exemption as presented in the exemption application and affidavit to create one new parcel designated as Mullen Road right-of-way.
Second.
Further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Logan. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there any other business that needs to come before us today? Oh,
Andrew has.
Andrew, did you have something, some late breaking news from Water's Edge? Was that an accidental raising of the hand?
No, it was not. My apologies. I was sorry. I was trying to get home quickly before my item came up, and I was in transit. And I want to make sure that there were no other questions from commissioners on our one side of street parking request.
I think we're good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like your views were represented well.
So it sounds like August 8th is what we're looking at?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
August 8th.
Okay, I will let you guys go. Thank you.
Thanks.
You bet. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? John is in the starting blocks there, I see. So, okay. With that, we'll be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
They're calling it the Mullen Road right away. It's Mullen Road.